So welcome to the next in the series of Confessions of a Business Owner, and I'm delighted this afternoon to welcome Phil Fraser, who a couple of years ago sold his business in what he claims is, or what he says is, a multi-million-pound deal. And what I want to explore with Phil this afternoon is how important purpose is when you want to stick on that journey, when you're looking at that end game. Purpose is all about having that dialed in, and if you don't have that dialed in and you're not fulfilling your purpose in business, you tend to get off track, you get sidetracked, you start to fall out of love with your business a little bit, and you start to really question whether you want to still be there. So it's important in this webinar series that I help you really understand what purpose is and how important that is as a cornerstone to building the right business. So Phil, it's 2 years pretty much.
Yep.
Just for all those watching, all those listening, just give us a quick introduction to yourself, your business, what your business was, and how long you were trading.
Okay, so I did sort of 15 years what I'd call sort of proper jobs, and then around 2000 launched, and it happened by accident, and I think nowadays you'd call it a pivot, but it was an accident. We launched a comparison website for online bingo. At the time, there were only, the market was only the US. Eventually, it developed into the UK. Classic case of starting kitchen table, myself and my wife, no investment. You know, one of the happiest days of my business life was our first $6 sale, which was fantastic. And then the business grew and grew and grew. It took 5 years before we got our first office and first staff, and so we launched in 2000. We sold in 2018 to a PLC, and yes, it was a multi-million-pound sale.
Fantastic. Phil, when you say you got into it by accident, because a lot of business owners do get into business by accident. You know, they've taken a redundancy check, what the hell do I do now? Or they just stumble upon something. So just tell us a little bit about how you managed to start a business by accident. How does that work?
Yeah, so I worked at William Hill, whose headquarters were in Leeds at the time. And I launched their first ever online casino. While I was at William Hill, one of the directors asked me to look into a new sector at the time, which was online bingo. I did a presentation to the board about online bingo. They decided not to do it at the time. And towards the end of the year, I left the business. I think you'd call it musical differences between me and my boss. And I started, well, I was sort of doing two things. So I was still looking, at that point, I was looking for a new proper job, but at the same time, to fill in, I was working as a consultant in the online gaming space, because at the time there weren't a lot of people who had done any work in the sector. It was a growth sector, so I was working on that, and then was actually talking to somebody about they wanted to get into the industry, and I said, well, the next big thing is going to be bingo, online bingo. And then sort of a couple of days later, sort of took a step back and thought, hang on a minute, I'm advising somebody to do something and I'm not listening to me. So what I did was I dusted off my presentation that I'd done to the board, sort of reframed it slightly, and went out to the market in sort of classic Dragon's Den style to try and get some funding to launch what would have been the UK's first ever online bingo site. Now, this was at the time when the dot-com bubble was just about to burst. Nobody had heard of online bingo in the UK, and it was legally grey in the US. So quite understandably, I got turned down by everybody. However, what I'd done was I built a website, a directory of online bingo sites that were out there at the time. And on it, I'd put a very simple pop-up questionnaire to get some demographics, age, spend, frequency, that type of thing, so that I could use that data in my angel investment presentation and then sort of prove that I, prove that I knew the market. But what happened was a number of the existing US online bingo sites contacted me and said, can I advertise on your website? Yeah, sure, no problem with that, no problem at all. While still at the same time, as I say, looking for a proper job. And it grew from there. But the interesting thing was I actually got myself a proper job. And I went in to see them on the Friday before the Monday I was due to start and said, really sorry about this, but I've got this thing that might take off. I've got to give it a go. I can't take the job. And sort of and that was the accident. It wasn't a business I chose to start. It wasn't a business that I'd even set out a business plan for. We started getting this advertising revenue coming in to such a point where I had to sort of do I take the opportunity, or do I go, fine, I'm happy taking the what was, at the time a very good job, nice salary, expense account, company car, all that sort of stuff. But I actually sort of went for the opportunity. So a lot of people talk about, I can't find an opportunity. Sometimes they're in your lap, and actually, I could have quite easily taken the job and it would never have happened. So it was, as I say, a bit of an accident.
And you know what? There's always a dose of luck in any successful business tale for me, because William Hill could have said, "That's a great idea, Phil. Run with it."
Yeah.
Or you could have stayed at William Hill and not fallen out with your boss, and you would have not. And equally, was the UK market right for online gambling and online bingo to come into the UK? So you've probably been lucky in so much as a number of things happened that put you in a position where you thought, what, it is a great opportunity.
That's right. And through the whole process from launch all the way through, there's a lot of hard work went into it and all that sort of stuff, but I can't underestimate the amount of luck, right place, right time, lots and lots. As you say, I've never even considered that before. What would have happened if William Hill had said, yes, that's a good idea?
Yeah.
I've never considered that before, but that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, so absolutely. And Phil, obviously we're chatting here a little bit in the first instance about purpose or your why. Simon Sinek calls it why. What does that mean to you, and how important has that been to keep you on track through those 18 years? Because you will have had, downs as well as ups, difficult times, times when you thought, is this working? Should I chuck it all in and go get a proper job? Yeah. What does purpose mean to you, and how important was it to keep you on track for 18 years?
I think it's interesting that I think that the purpose, in terms of the purpose of the business, developed and changed as it grew. I was very keen right from the start that it had a very clear USP, and we became a directory that listed every single bingo site in the UK, whether we had a commercial deal with them or not. So that it was almost, in my mind, and what I tried to impose on the team was very much we want to be the BBC of the sector, that sort of reliable core central part, almost like the Times or the BBC, that type of thing. But then as we developed and the market developed and the whole sector got bigger and bigger and bigger, we kept that core, but the focus became, we created a BHAG. So those who know Jim Collins is good to great. BHAG is big, hairy, audacious goal. So we set this massive goal to be the biggest supplier of online bingo players in the whole world, which at the time, sort of 4 or 5 of us sat in an office in Leeds, is quite a big target. And that became our core, that became our focus, that became our purpose. And we actually had it on a big flip chart. We got it laminated. We had it in our meeting room. So any meeting we were in, when we were discussing, should we do this, should we do that, should we do that, we could always go back to, does it actually fit the BHAG? And at times we did go, and mainly driven by me, I have to say, because I'm a shiny new exciting things person. So let's do this, let's do this. And actually having that for somebody else in the team to be able to say to me, whoa, hang on a minute, that doesn't match. You call it focus, we call it a BHAG. That core goal of what we're trying to aim at. And it makes it very black and white. Because you can say to somebody, does what you are proposing fit with where we're trying to go? And a lot of the time it's very black and white. You go, yeah, it's a good idea, but it doesn't fit our purpose or our focus. And at times you then maybe think, okay, well, we need to tweak the focus to be to as the industry and as the sector and as the market changes. Yes, your purpose might change, but then once you've determined that's it, we all stick to that.
And it's that purpose, if you like, the reason for being, that should keep everybody on track, focused, aligned. But it's also that thing when, you know, you finish at work in extraordinarily long hours, or the money's not quite pulling through, or you are falling out of love because you're doing the wrong things in your business. It's that purpose that should anchor you back to, this is why we're doing this. This is the difference we want to make to our audience.
Yeah, very much so. And I think as you grow, and those who've sort of set up their own business and grown with it, you bring staff members in, you bring team members in, and you give them some input into what's going on. And within that, there will be times when they want to pull you off, and sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're right to go, right, we want to go this direction. You know, actually, that's quite a good idea. But you're right. At times, you just have to sit there and go, this is what we're trying to do. You know, we were an online business, so we got at various times Google changed the goalposts and moved the parameters and things like that, and we had competition doing things that maybe weren't the right things to do from an SEO point of view, and you get frustrated. We're doing all the right things, they're cheating the system, and they're doing better than us, and it's just that. Yeah. You just got to keep going. And I was very much of the idea, keep plowing on the right direction, we'll get there.
Phil, at what point, because 95% of small business owners don't have an idea of an exit plan, even however many years are in the business. At what point on that 18-year journey did you start to think about, I need to get this beast in a position where I can exit? And then once you'd hit that point, what did you start to do differently as a result?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, because of the sector we were in, it was a very fast-growing sector. So we were online bingo. Obviously, you've got online sports betting, you've got online casino, you've got online poker. The market, obviously, the last 10, 15 years has exploded. And over that time, there have been lots of people buying other companies within the sector. So we actually got quite regularly got people knocking on the door saying, would you like to sell? And my answer right from day one was very much a case of, if you put enough money on the table, yeah, of course we will. However, being approached quite early in our journey made me realize that actually I can't sell until I get myself out of the business, because there's no point. It's like if you're a self-employed plumber, you couldn't sell your business because you are the business. So subconsciously, I was aware as we were growing that I had to extricate myself from the business. Not that I had a plan to sell, but it was just every time somebody came knocking on the door, I was thinking, okay, well, if something did happen, I would have to get myself out of it, or at least get to a position where I could reduce what I was doing. And as I say, that wasn't a conscious decision, but it was a point of, at some point we will have to do this, so we'll have to do it. And as the business grows, as any business grows, you start delegating stuff, and just by the nature of, when you start off, you do everything yourself. As you grow, you start doing less, and then you determine what it is that I or the individual brings to the business, and then you go, okay, well, how do we get to the business running without me? And the trigger actually came for us to proactively do that. We actually put the business on the market a few years previous to when we actually sold. I got to the point where, and this isn't meant to sound arrogant, but the business was running itself, and I got a bit bored. Right, I just want to get rid of it. And we got very close to selling, but the plan B was always, if we don't sell it, we'll get somebody else in to run it. And that basis, at least it's still running, and I'm not bored. Somebody else is doing it for me.
Yeah.
That we didn't sell. We got the person in. That then allowed us to build to a point where, when somebody serious came along to buy, I was pretty much not needed for the business, but I was doing the big picture stuff, the strategy stuff that obviously if somebody buys, somebody else is going to do anyway.
So you get to that point where you seriously there's an opportunity to exit at some point. Did you take advice? Is it, where did you get the information from? What are the ingredients that a business that's looking to sell needs, and how did you come about finding out what those ingredients are?
It was a number of things. The first part of the learning curve was when we proactively when we didn't sell, but when we actually went to look to sell. So we spoke to various, I suppose you call them business sale agents, and they're not necessarily the right way to go. I did a lot of reading around the subject. We were recommended somebody down in Wakefield as a, I don't know how you describe her, not necessarily, more a business advisor / salesperson. So she had experience in M&A and that sort of stuff. So we learned a lot from that. And a lot of the learning came through that aborted process first. But what you have to do, I think, is sit back and go, okay, we need a lawyer, we need an accountant. There's no point in skimming on either of those, because you're going to need one to get a good one and get one that's got experience of doing what you're doing. Now, your accountant that you might use as a business on a day-to-day basis might not be the right person to be holding your hand when you sell.
Yeah.
And your solicitor who did the mortgage for you, did the house purchase for you, isn't necessarily going to be the right solicitor for your business sale. So you need people who've been there and done that. In terms of proactively selling, there are places to go that you can put your business on the market.
Yeah.
Now, that's not necessarily the right way to go. Depends on the market, depends on the business, depends on the business size, and depends on your sector. We had a fairly tight sector to go at, and it's a sector that a lot of people know each other in, and it was easy when we did get round to selling. It almost got to the case of knocking on the door and going, look, we're for sale, do you want to buy us? Which I wouldn't recommend doing, but there's ways and means of putting your feelers out to go, what's happening in the market.
I think 70%, the statistic I heard, 70% of acquisitions are by a business that you would never have heard of, not necessarily from a bigger player in the sector. Sometimes people want to get into for strategic reasons, geography, product offering, whatever. So it isn't sometimes a case of knocking on your peers and saying, you're a bit bigger, do you want to buy us? Sometimes you just don't even know.
Correct.
So those ingredients then, so one is, have you got a business that runs by itself largely?
Yep.
What are the other key ingredients of a business that's saleable?
I think obviously it's got to be profitable. Well, it actually doesn't necessarily need to be profitable. It depends who wants to buy you and why they want to buy you. But I think you need to have all your ducks in a row from a systems point of view, from a reporting point of view, from an accountancy point of view. As soon as somebody comes to you, however they get to you to buy you, they're going to say, I want to see the accounts, I want to see I want to see top clients. Are there contracts in place? How long are the contracts for? Can they all just walk off when we take over? You've got to think as a business owner, whether it be a short period of time or a long period of time, you're not going to be there. So you've got to think, okay, if you've got one of those systems where, I know it's all written down on bits of paper somewhere, or it's in my head, that doesn't make you it may well be a hugely profitable business, but if it can't run without you, if you're thinking of selling and leaving, then that's not really the point. Some people are quite happy to sell and stay on. If that's the case, that's fine. But the risk from the buyer's point of view is what happens if you get knocked down by a bus.
Yeah.
So you've almost got to look at it as though, if I, look at it the other way around. So if I was buying one of a competitor or somebody else, what would I want? What would I want to see? And that is usually going to be the sort of things they're going to want to know from you.
So usually it's sustained and contracted revenue. So will that revenue continue without the business owner? So contracted particularly. Anything as yours was, and we'll touch on this in a moment, kind of recurring revenue, that kind of stuff. Making sure the business can run without you, making sure you've got a strong team. making sure everything's systemized. So you're no longer on fag packets, all the rest of it. So they're the key ingredients, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And Andy's asked a good question here, because sometimes you can just do an outright sale. You can sell up and say, bye bye, I'm out of here, disappear.
yeah,
Sometimes they put you on a model where you might stay on for a couple of years to make sure those projected revenues come through.
yep.
So I think it's a drawdown model, or call it what you will, but I think yours was just almost pretty much a straight exit, wasn't it?
It was as close to a straight exit as you're going to get. I mean, I saw Andy's question. A lot depends on what you want to do as the seller of your business. I think psychologically, from our point of view, our sector had got very, very big, very, very, I was going to say quickly, but over sort of 10, 15 year period. And I, as a bit of a control freak and a bit of I suppose it's part of being an entrepreneur, and most people listening will know, is sometimes you want to be in control, and if it's not your baby, it's like, right, you have it. I now think, well, geez, I couldn't work for anybody now.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's psychological, sometimes it's financial. It may well be that as a small business, your business might be more effective as part of a big business, and you might say, do you know what? I'll take half my money now, but I think it's going to be worth more in 5 years' time. So actually, I'll ride on the back of the people who are acquiring me. Whereas other people just say, look, there you go. You give me some money. I'll give you the keys. I'll show you how all the systems work, and I'll see you later.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because some people don't like the sight of somebody else playing with their train set. And others, it's a case of, I want to hang around and see if I can help you take this up to the next level, and I can benefit from that. So that's down to individual, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases you see somebody who's senior, or whether it's management team or whether it's the owner in a smaller business, stay on and have a big role in the big business. So they might say, yeah, come on board and you're sales director for a bigger beast. And actually some people might have got to the point where they go, do you know what, I'm sick and tired of staff and chasing debts and finding new businesses. I'm much happier turning up at a PLC headquarters. I get my car, I get my salary, I get my bonus, happy to contribute, but I've had enough of me on my own and me having to get the answers for everybody. Yeah. So a lot depends, and obviously a lot of it depends on what the acquirer wants to do as well. The acquirer may well be acquiring your business because of you as the owner. They might actually want you and proactively go, right, I want the business, but I'm only buying it if you stay, because I can see how you can add value to my bigger business.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and everyone's different. I've got a client who's in the accounting space that completed an acquisition a couple of years ago, and the guy that bought the business off would not stop meddling at all. He wouldn't accept the fact that, they had a different way of doing things, different way of treating customers. He would be in the office while 3 a.m. doing a tax return. They're saying, we've got a team, we'll deal with it when we get round to it. And he kept meddling, and he would not back off. So he's finished up having to go to him to say, look, here's a chunk of money, I'm paying you off early. I need you out of here, because the cultural differences are huge. Yeah. Then I've got another couple of clients that have sold up and stayed on in the business, and they've got a degree of income coming in for a while. They're taken on as a consultant or on a salary, but the very, very moment that business had everything that meant they didn't need them, they threw them away like an old sock. Yeah. And then they're feeling quite despondent then, because they've kind of let me go at short notice. Well, they're always going to let you go as soon as they don't need you. Absolutely. You're only there while ever they need you, right?
Yeah, and you'll get businesses will say, as part of the deal, we want you to stay on for 6 months as a consultant to hold our hands and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Others will say, we're going to pay you whatever the figure might be, but we're only giving you in drips and drabs, and you've got to do an earn out. You've got to make sure that, it's all right saying, oh yeah, buy this business, it's going to make 5 million quid next year. They go, well, tell you what, you stay on, you make sure it delivers 5 million quid, and then we'll give you what you said. We'll give you a chunk sell it for you. Yeah. It's very, very much horses for courses, and businesses and sectors, and a lot of it is personal, what the person wants. As part of my sale, the guy the company that bought us, said to me right up front, he says, do you want to stay in or do you want to go? I was given the option.
Yeah, and we know what option he took. But it's fair to say though, Phil, because you and I were just chatting at the time, weren't we, about doing some work together? But at the time, you were number one in the UK market.
Yep.
You weren't looking to be sold. You were actually on the acquisition trail yourself.
That's right.
And this completely came out of the blue, didn't it?
Yeah. We were in our sector. There were half a dozen sort of big acquirers. So they were picking off companies like us regularly. So it was a very acquisitive market. But at the same time, sort of further down the food chain, our biggest competitor just so happened to be on the market at the time. So I thought, okay, well, takes the number two out of the market out, comes under our umbrella. We've got much bigger market share. You can put your prices up, etc., etc., etc. So that was on the horizon. Not on, we were talking to them and we'd put an offer in, and we weren't near the asking price, but we thought put a cheeky offer in anyway. And then one of the acquirers approached us. So that sort of the bigger fish in the sea came knocking on the door. And the answer was the same answer, which it always is, which is if you put enough money on the table, I'm quite happy to sell.
And from that point, so just to educate those watching this, so from the point when they first knocked on the door,
yep,
to the deal being done and you walking out was typically what length of time?
So just to give you some background on the way it worked out. So the company came knocking on the door, said, we'll give you X. And X was, yeah, that's nice. I like the sound of X. Went down to meet them. And then the meeting went along the lines, well, when we said X, it wasn't exactly X. It was Y and a bit of this and a bit of that. So actually, it wasn't as good a deal as we thought it was. But that then sort of got me thinking. So I went around the rest of the sector, rest of the acquirers, and said, look, if you're interested in us at the moment, we're talking to somebody else, it might be worth having a conversation. So it wasn't saying we're for sale, it was just saying, look, if you want a conversation, we're available. One of the acquirers came back and said, yeah, we're interested. We got talking to them. Long story short, another acquirer came back in. So a third company came in and said, look, we're interested. We were very close to doing a deal with the second one. So I said to the third company, right, these approximate, I didn't give them numbers, but these are approximately where you need to be to make us change horse. Because, I'd given this guy my word that we were going to do it. We hadn't signed any papers, but so I didn't like to mess him about. So I said to this guy, look, you've got to move the dial considerably for me to let this other guy down, which he did. So from that point, that was late October, early November. The deal was signed in April, and we had a 3-month handover. We left in July. Now that timeline could have been shorter because the lawyers, they were an international company, so they had American-trained lawyers speaking to English-trained lawyers, and it all got a little bit messy. So it could have been, you could have maybe taken the 6 weeks out of that.
But probably what, 9 months in total?
9 months, and it could have been 5 or 6. So 6 months. 6 months is a fair time. 6 months is a fair timeline, and you can do it quicker.
And on reflection, Phil, you weren't looking to sell, but you had a business that you knew was in a position to be able to be sold. I think, you said when we spoke previously that it was in a position to be sold, but there's maybe a little bit of tidying up around the edges to be done because you weren't actually looking to sell exactly at that time. So what were those loose ends that needed tidying up?
A lot of it was actually internal reporting. So because it was it grew as a small business, we put reporting systems in place for what we wanted to do. And those reporting systems, they were okay. They weren't huge, big data sets. Most of it was on Excel, so it wasn't that big. But the acquirer wanted a lot of data that we hadn't collated. And they wanted it so they wanted the data slicing different ways, and obviously they wanted it backwards a bit. So I had, because I didn't tell anybody this was happening, I had to then sort of recalibrate data going back 3 years from pulling different reports that we had in different places. And that was probably the biggest part of it. And also, and anybody got anything online, and this always happens, is your developers or your web designers will do stuff. They'll just, say, well, I need this doing, I need that doing. They'll do it, fine, it works. There's no record, there's no reason for them to explain what they've done to anybody else out of the company. Yeah. So when an acquirer comes in and goes, right, where are your backup notes, systems, whatever techie people are supposed to have, where are they? They don't exist because we've never asked for them or we've never needed them. So they were probably the two main issues. We were doing monthly management reports, so they were all in place. With all our accounts were on zero, so that was all in place. We had all the data, it just wasn't in a format that the acquirer wanted. Now, how much of that we could have pre-guessed, maybe part of it. But the best way to use data is to use it when it's effective for you as a business.
Yes.
So it'd be a bit pointless me asking my sales manager to do an analysis of data that doesn't make it has no use internally. But when an external acquirer comes in, they want to go, well, how much did this cost? Where did this come from? All that sort of thing. So they were the bits that needed tidying around the edges, really.
Ah, fantastic. And on reflection, what, if anything, would you have done differently? What do you wish would have happened or didn't happen? On reflection, could the process have gone better for you? What could or should you have done differently?
I think I think there's two things I would say. Number one was this issue. We had an issue quite early on with the lawyers. So American trained lawyers talking to English lawyers. So phraseologies and legal concepts they use in America, we might have the same thing, but it's written differently, it says different things, all that sort of thing. We also got they particularly got very tied down in the heads of terms, whereas heads of terms should be a pretty straightforward document and all the nitty gritty goes in the contract. Yeah. What we ended up doing was we spent a lot of time on heads of terms, which actually we shouldn't have done. We should have spent the time on the actual sale document. They had, because they were a PLC, the finance guy needed his input, the operational guy needed his input, and the strategic guy needed his input. So we had changes going in and out of documents that, they'd say, one guy'd say, I want this, one guy'd say, I want that, one guy would say, I want the other, and then we'd go back to the start again and needed amend what the third guy had said. Some of that you can't get over. Precursor to that, I would have maybe strategically for the business gone down the acquisition route earlier, because if you sell on a multiple of X, if it's the same multiple, the bigger the original business is, the more money you're going to get.
Of course. That's
a strategic decision. It's something I hadn't thought through at the time, but looking back now, that would have been more. I'd have probably pushed a bit more and a bit earlier to do some more acquisition.
Right. So then, because you've got the same multiple of a higher EBITDA, effectively.
Yeah. Correct.
And one thing that always fascinates me when I'm having conversations of this nature with clients that are looking to sell is whether you do or don't engage your team. Because sometimes if you go to your team and say, I'm looking to sell, they go, well, why should I continue to flog my guts off for you to kind of benefit? And then you'll disappear and leave us all in the lurch. Sometimes it's a case of, well, I need you guys to help me run a business, and I'll financially benefit you somehow. So where were you in terms of how and what you engage your team in terms of looking to exit?
Yeah, I told them nothing.
Okay.
I told them the day after I signed the contract.
Okay. And was there any resentment as a result of that, or did everybody
yes.
kind of right? Okay.
we had probably there's two levels of it. The second level was the way it worked was the PLC that bought us were a non-UK PLC, so they wanted none of our staff.
Okay.
So we had to do a legal workaround that our solicitors worked on, whereby the acquirer wanted our staff for 3 months to do the handover, but then didn't want them. So I had to stand up in front of my team and say, hey guys, I've just sold the business. you need to stay for 3 months, but then you haven't got a job.
Thanks, Phil.
So you asked the question, was there any resentment? Yes, there was. But we put together a very, very good package for them, whereby obviously they were paid their full 3 months, obviously. They got a big loyalty payment at the end for staying. And obviously we allowed them to go for job interviews and stuff like that during the 3-month period. So actually the vast majority of them got a lump sum on the Friday, tax-free, as a loyalty bonus, started on a new job on the Monday, arguably on a better salary, because naturally that's what happened. So actually, I think they all ended up okay. Yeah, obviously at the time, it gets very emotional. And yeah, I was very pleased to hear that after it all settled down, a number of them came knocking on my door and said, look, Phil, I don't blame you for what you've done. Well done. I'd have done the same.
Yeah.
And
Good.
the only thing is I'm upset because I'd like to stay here and I like working for you and I like the business. So that's sort of where the upset came. And one particular senior member of staff had been knocking on my door for shares for a while. Although he had a very good salary and a very, very good bonus, I'd never done shares with him. So he was very like, I've contributed to the value of this business and I'm not getting anything out of this sale. But he ended up with a nice settlement as well. So.
Fantastic. One last question for me before we open it up, and this is just really educating those that are watching and listening. There's different ways of valuing a business. You mentioned earlier not necessarily on profitability, but
yeah,
from your perspective, it was a pure multiple of EBITDA.
The thing about valuations is I've always looked at it very objectively, and Gary, I'm going to buy your business. I'll give you £1 million for it, right?
Yeah. Now
you can say, oh well, that's 4 times the EBITDA, or 5 times profitability, or 3.5 times, or 6 times turnover. What in my mind, it doesn't matter, because if I'm giving you £1 million for your business, how I've got to that £1 million is down to me.
Yeah.
Now, it may well be that a sector, as a norm, values a business on turnover. It might value a business on profitability. It might value it on EBITDA. It might value it on EBIT. It might value it on, if you're buying a PLC, it'll be on profit multiples. It really depends on the market and how the market does that valuation. EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA is a magical unicorn figure that you can, well, I don't include that and I include that, and you've got to add that back on. At the end of the day, it's a number. You end up with a number. How you reverse justify that number is up to you. But if you know what the market is doing and how the market values business, you then have an idea of what your business is worth.
No, absolutely. Look, it's one of those, isn't it? How, and the reason I asked the question, so again, in the accounting space, that tends to be a multiple of revenue, not EBITDA. So I've got a client at the moment that is acquisitive. So we need to know how much we're going to value a business at when we go knocking. So we need to know how much we need in the coffers to be able to go knock on a business turnover £500,000. We need to know what to offer. So you've got to do your market research and understand how businesses in your sector are valued and what the likely multiple or enterprise value that you're going to generate. And at the end of the day, if you're happy with £1 million, who cares? But if you want 2 and it's currently only valued at 1, you need to know what you need to do to get it from a valuation of A to B, don't you?
Correct.
So that's the key, is understanding the minutiae in your own sector, and then developing a bit of a plan.
And what you'll also find, by the nature of business, smaller businesses will have lower multiples than bigger businesses.
Yes.
So, if you're talking acquisitive, if you can use accountancy as an example, if you can acquire 5 accountancy firms at 2 times revenue, once you've got that bigger unit, it might be valued at 3 times by the bigger fish above you.
Yes.
Or 4 times or 5 times. So actually understanding, depending on why you want to do the acquisition, if you want to do the acquisition as a buy and build and sell, if you know how much you can buy the little ones for and how much you can sell it to the big boys for, and what size their minimum size is, and what their multiple they're looking at, there's a clear strategic margin. You can just go, if I buy enough at 2 times, I can sell them all at 4, and I don't have to do anything. Just tidy them up a little bit.
So it's a simple buying and selling scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
And look, throughout all of this, Phil, you know, and this is the key for me today, is you've been absolutely crystal clear on your purpose about being that, you know, the biggest supplier of you know, bingo, and just you've stayed pretty much on that straight line. And whenever you've had a bit of a waver, or should we sell, shouldn't we sell, you've kind of gone back to your purpose and gone, no, this is our kind of raison d'etre. We're sticking on that straight line for a while.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Phil, some great insight this afternoon. Thank you. If I open it up to everybody for questions, if you can just stick them in the chat box, if you don't mind. Who's got a question for Phil, please? So there's from David. In hindsight, would you have included the team from an earlier stage rather than after the event? That's from David.
No, on the basis that I don't know how, David, I don't know how big your business is, but if you went to your number 2, or if you imagine you're owning a big business, and as Gary had said earlier, you know, hey Gary, I know you're my sales manager, but I'm thinking of selling the business. What, you know, Gary's going to go, shit, tomorrow I'm looking for a new job. Now it may well be that actually part of the bigger sale picture, Gary's got an opportunity to be sales director of the bigger unit, but he doesn't see that, because as soon as you say I'm selling the business, everyone goes, right, get me indeed.com. So I'd say no.
But if there is a scenario that you can tie your team into some kind of profit share or some kind of shares, so their support they benefit from that in the end, that's the only way that you'd really involve them, that they see a bigger financial benefit.
Yeah, I think if you're at a point where the acquirer had said to you, look, I'm keeping the whole team and I'm giving them all 10% salary increases.
Yeah.
You might then go to your team and say, look guys, this is what's going to happen. Nothing's changing. I'm staying. We're all staying. We're all getting a salary increase, and we're part of a bigger business. Yes, you might do, but from my experience and my reading, it was very much a case of on a purely need to know basis. I'll tell you a very quick funny story. One of the questions my acquirer asked was a tech question about how the back end worked and all that sort of thing. And I've got very, very basic tech understanding, and I couldn't ask the techie the question because it's quite obvious. Why would I need to know that? So I went in on a Sunday morning, dialed in, they dialed in, and they were looking through all our code and all that sort of thing. And fine, he said, oh, we haven't finished yet. Can I do it on Monday morning? I said, well, the team get in at 8. So I said, tell you what, I'll come in at 6. Came in at 6, and he took about an hour or so, about an hour and a half. And I just logged off, went out the door, and my techie was coming in. He'd come in early because he had a project to do or something. I said, oh, I'm going to the gym. I forgot my kit. It was in my office, and scurried out. 5 minutes later, he'd have caught me.
Wow. It's a tricky one. Question here from Andy. How do you know that you're actually getting a decent deal?
That's a very simple question. Well, it's a simple answer, but it's sometimes hard to do. It's by understanding what the value of the market is. So we said earlier about, if you know, Gary, that accountants are being valued at 2 times turnover, if somebody comes to you and says, I'll give you 3 times turnover, yeah, it's a good deal. If they come to you and say, I'll give you 1 times turnover, it's a bad deal. So it's actually about understanding and knowing what prices are being, what prices companies in your sector are being bought for at the same time.
Yeah. You had a magic number, didn't you? And I know you're not going to share that because I wouldn't want you to. You had a magic number in mind, and I think I remember you saying to me,
we had a magic multiple.
Yeah.
So as I say, our market was there were a number of big acquisitors, and the figures they were paying was quite public. So it was either in the trade press or through consultants and experts. So we knew 5.5 times was market value. So anybody who considerably moved the needle over 5.5, we knew we were getting a good deal. I'll leave it there.
Fantastic, great question. Anybody else got any more questions for Phil? Rona, you must have a question. Ian? No? Ben? Okay, let's leave it there then if there's no more questions. Phil, you shared some great insight. It's been a pleasure knowing you over the last 2 or 3 years as part of that journey, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what your next steps are. It's really been kind of fantastic. I've learned a lot from you and a lot from the process over time. So thanks again to all of those that have dialed in live and all of those that are watching this on replay. Some great insight, as Rona said there. As I say, these webinars are all about really helping you understand the importance of purpose and dialing your purpose back in that keeps you on track when things get tough. When you're running a business, it is possible quite often to get trapped, and purpose actually is the one thing that brings you back to what you should be doing, why you should be doing it, and hopefully you build that right team, get the lifestyle, the rewards that you want to free you. So just goes for me to say, Phil, thanks ever so much for your time.
Pleasure. Hope you all enjoyed it.
For dialing in, and yeah, thanks everybody. Take care for now.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.